destroyed. Nothing looks like Puerto Rico.
Hurricane Maria batters Puerto Rico, wind and water damage everywhere, and no power. The situation is desperate.
Truly amazing how quickly things have turned around.
Road to recovery, a long road for the people in the Keys working to rebuild. The man in charge is here with us live.
It's disgusting. I feel my heart goes out to every one of those family members that lost a loved one.
Rising death toll, the 11th patient from a Hollywood nursing home dies from sweltering heat and bad conditions as the governor imposes tougher rules.
Good morning. So great to have you with us today. South Florida and the Caribbean are reeling from two killer storms named Irma and Maria, beginning the long, expensive recovery and already considering lessons learned.
We are going to begin with Irma, which made landfall in the lower Keys. A week passed before evacuated residents could get back there to see what remained of their homes, if anything. Irma made landfall in Cudjoe Key, a few miles from Key West, which was largely spared. In the lower and middle Keys, the storm ripped off roofs, blew trailers off foundations, and tossed boats aground.
One of every 4 homes in the Keys was damaged or flat out destroyed. Newer homes and businesses built to the newer codes generally fared well. Still, thousands lost homes and their livelihoods. And
with us here this morning in the studio, Roman Gustesi, the county administrator of Monroe County, a leader in the Keys recovery and rebuilding process. Roman, great to have you come in. Thank you so much.
Good morning.
Give us a status report. Where do the Keys stand in terms of power, water, cell phones, internet?
Almost 100% restored when it comes to those issues, which is great, which is amazing 2 weeks later that we can have that conversation. Only the hardest hit areas, just south of the 7 Mile Bridge to about mile marker 15, there's still some outages in that area.
So many people, though, are still, housing has to be the biggest issue right now. Shelter for people who have none, workforce housing for people who need to go in and be part of the tourist industry. Where does that stand?
Well, we're working on that. Right now, a lot of folks are staying in hotels, they're staying with friends, they're staying with family, and that's great, but that is not a long-term solution, you can imagine. So we're working on various options to help those folks out.
Late this week, FEMA issued a statement saying that roughly between 10 to 15,000 residences in the Keys, mainly in the area you mentioned, I guess from Marathon down to just above Key West, were either damaged or badly damaged or destroyed. That's just a huge hit. A quarter of the homes in the Florida Keys gone, unlivable.
That's a problem. It's a problem. The good news is that half of those, because half of the residents in the Keys are second homeowners, so they don't need a place to live. So now you're down to the 5-6 range, but it's still a lot. It's still a lot of folks. So we're helping them out. Again, not one size fits all. There's various options for all these folks.
Well, so let's drill down a little bit into that, because there are, we see South Florida is so interconnected. There's Broward, there's Dade, there's Monroe. We see a lot of people coming north, basing in maybe Broward or Miami-Dade, going to the Keys every day to do the recovery work. So specifically, what kind of sheltering is available? What can these people expect?
Well, there's transition. Again, a lot of folks are in hotels right now, but we're going to need the hotels when we come up to tourism. I'm sure we'll talk about that in the near future here. Yeah. So in the meantime, we have to have these tent villages, if you will. They're base camps, and all the workers are moving from the hotels to the base camps, so that frees up the hotels for some of the residents.
When you say workers, are these electrical workers, work crews, recovery crews, or are these people who are coming to their own homes every day?
All those folks. All those folks that are down here, down in the Keys, helping us out.
And how are you feeding them?
Well, the base camps have actually pretty good food. I've had some of the food myself.
MREs?
No. We had Sloppy Joe the other day. It was fantastic. I like Sloppy Joe.
Who cooks?
They do. They bring all the FEMA is paying for most of this stuff. We're paying for it too.
Roman, the housing in the Keys, there's a large percentage of mobile homes. Is this time now to look at mobile homes are affordable housing. That's a great thing for so many people, especially second homes. But is it time to look at how mobile homes fare in a storm magnet island?
It is, and there's a difference between a mobile home and a modular that's well constructed, well put together. Those did very well. The newer ones held up very well. They're still there.
What's the difference between the newer modular and old mobile homes?
Well, they're tied down better, they're built to standards, the new standards, and they did very well.
Well, the New York Times, in fact, did a story that said the newer modular homes that were tied down actually had fared pretty well. I think the real success story here is that concrete block and other homes built to the new building code post-Andrew, even though everything around them was wiped out, those structures themselves did remarkably well.
Remarkably well. You can see it's very distinct when you fly over it or drive it. You can tell which were the newer built homes, absolutely.
All right, so now comes your opinion on something passed in the legislature a couple of months ago. Now Florida lawmakers have decided that the building industry doesn't have to automatically adopt changes to the International Building Code every year, done because that's very expensive, adds a lot to the cost of housing. Do you have an opinion, and if so, what is it,
well,
on whether or not South Florida should stand by the International Building Code changes or reflect on them piecemeal, as now is the law, and decide whether to adopt them? Is that a slippery slope?
No, I think it's pretty straightforward. You see it. You see it on the ground now. We have empirical data, real data. Really, we see it. So we're going to take it to Tallahassee and we're going to show them. And this started back with Andrew. We worked together back in Andrew. And Charlie Danger, if he's, remember him?
Oh, sure. The building inspector for Miami-Dade.
Yeah,
with the best name in government.
A great guy. Yeah.
And he should take a lot of credit right now because what he has done for this state is amazing. We just need to continue on that road.
Yeah. So you think, just to be clear, that law should be reversed, that South Florida Building Code should adopt International Building Code standards as they're changed possibly every year, 3
We
years?
certainly need to discuss it, at least have some kind of transition period to get there because it works. It clearly works.
Don't want to be a Pollyanna about what's going on down there, but in fact today a cruise ship is going to dock at Key West. Now that's just symbolically, I think that's important.
It is very important, and it's a low impact tourism because they get there, they 4, 5, 6 hours on Duval Street and buy some things, and then they get back on the cruise ship. So it's a low impact, but it makes a big difference for those folks that need those jobs.
Yeah. Key West, let's say again, even though the shrubbery, the vegetation, palm trees, I mean, there was a lot of damage like that. The city of Key West itself, which I love, used to have a house down there. It was largely spared, was it not?
Absolutely. They were on the clean side of the storm, if you will, and you can tell the forecasters will tell you they didn't see the strong winds that the upper key or the lower keys that area, Big Pine and those other areas saw.
Right, and the restaurants, bars, the famous Duval Street, they're coming back?
They're ready. As a matter of fact, they lifted the curfew last night, so they're ready.
Let's talk about the evacuation process. I know, it's probably not too soon to start learning lessons from what has gone on in the past couple of weeks. Rate the evacuation process, both the plan and the actual practical matter, and also people coming back in, because it was a week before a lot of people were permitted in the Keys for reasons that there just was not anything there to support them. How did that go? Were there lessons learned from that?
Absolutely. Every storm, we've been doing this for a long time. You learn something every storm, you improve for the next storm. The evacuation went very well. I think 80 to 90%. It's hard to really get a number, but just polling everybody else, I think 80 or 90% of the folks left, which is great. 100% of the tourists left. The Tourist Development Council did a great job emptying out the hotels.
Was that by law or by suggestion?
By suggestion. I mean, you saw this storm. It was a big, angry storm. So it was ready to, people knew that they needed to leave.
Yeah. One of the memorable moments involved you right before, I think, the 24 hours before Irma hit. You said at the Emergency Operations Center, okay, you want to stay, be a tough guy, it's on you. Yes. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but that's pretty much what you said. And in fact, there were some people who stayed, who paid with their lives.
Yes, it's unfortunate. Nobody should have lost their lives for this. We saw it coming for days. For days, we saw it coming our way. So there was no reason to be out on a bicycle or be on a boat or walking around in the storm. Those are the 3 lives that we lost.
All right, 3 directly storm-related, 14 altogether, but most of those were natural causes, people who were ill.
Correct. That happened to die during the storm. Correct.
Right.
So, well, let's go back to evacuation. What were the lessons learned? What did not go as planned?
Well, I think the evacuation itself went well. I think the re-entry is always a tough call. Those are always difficult. We went through our plan, the 3 phases, but some folks didn't feel like they were able to get back to their homes soon enough. And I'm fearful that that's going to prevent them from evacuating in the future.
So I was covering Miami Beach for the storm, and that was sort of similar. It wasn't as long as a week. I think the Tuesday afternoon, so it was a day and a half before beach residents and anybody was allowed back on the beach. And there was a lot of frustration. But I will tell you, as someone based there for a job who never left, I could not even imagine, with the state of the Miami Beach, of this city, I couldn't imagine hundreds of thousands of people, even thousands of people coming back and being able to do anything in the jungle that were the streets and some of the flooding areas. And I'm sure in the Keys it was even worse because of the nature of the storm.
Correct.
So what would you do next time?
Communication needed to be improved. If we explained to people why we're making the decisions that we're making, I think they would have felt better. But we were cut off. That was the biggest lesson learned. We're too dependent on our smartphones these days and cellular service. So we need to do a better job there.
Yeah, Roman, we know because we had some excellent reporters who were at the checkpoint down there at Florida City, where the Highway Patrol and Monroe County Sheriff's Office, others were stopping people from going back for that week. And people were understandably very frustrated. They wanted to see if their homes were left, if the damage, and they could not get in. And some of them said, this is it, I don't care what they tell me. Next time I'm staying, I'm not going back. What is that message?
That's a tough message, and I'm very fearful of that, because next time it could be even a worse hurricane, because it did come down a little bit, and it could have been a 175, 180 mile an hour hurricane like it hit some of the other islands. So I'm very fearful of that folks are not going to evacuate because of that. I don't know what to do other than we're going to communicate better in the future with them.
All right, we're with Roman Gustesi, the Monroe County Administrator. We'll be back, talk more about the future of the Keys and tourism. Will tourists come back to the Keys, and when? Stay with us. Welcome back on this Sunday morning, live in our studio. Roman Gustesi, the Monroe County Administrator. Let's talk about schools. That's a sign of real recovery, and some schools in the Keys will open tomorrow morning.
Yes, in the Upper Keys will be opening tomorrow morning, and then on Wednesday, the rest of the schools in the Middle Keys and the Lower Keys, with the exception of the hardest hit area, they'll open up the following Monday.
Sugarloaf.
Summerland Key or Sugarloaf?
Sugarloaf. They'll open Monday, October 2nd.
So what do, for those listening from Sugarloaf, if they can, what do those students do?
I don't know. I'm sorry.
We'll find that out. We'll find that out.
I don't know.
Yeah.
That's a school board that.
That's okay.
The governor has spent a lot of time in the Keys, and it clearly is dedicated to this recovery. I think has worked hard. And he has said October 1st is the goal. We're going to start a campaign with Visit Florida, spend $4 to $5 million, and tell America, tell the world, come on down, the Keys are back. But can the Keys be back by October 1st?
Well, that's that next weekend already? Is that when that is?
It's
I think
not
so.
far away.
I think so. It's not far away, especially the Upper Keys and Key West. They're just about ready for tourism. We have some hotels that we talked about are taken up by some of our folks, even our employees. Mm-hmm. So we need to find them housing. But it's little by little, it's getting better and better. I think October 1st, we're going to have a meeting tomorrow with the tourism folks and make that decision. So we'll have that decision for you tomorrow about midday.
Roman, one of the big positive stories coming out of the Keys post-Irma is the speed with which the electricity was restored to so many people. 9 out of 10 people got electricity, in a couple of days. And I don't think a lot of people realize that Keys has its own cooperative electrical utilities.
Right.
What did those utilities do that FP&L did not? Or is it a function of numbers, just because it's a smaller population?
I just know that we saw so many trucks. At one time in one of the conference calls, I asked, how many trucks are down here? Because everywhere I looked, there was utility trucks putting things up. So I think over 300 trucks showed up, or 500 people showed up, and it was amazing, absolutely amazing. My house in Palmetto Bay, I got electricity in my house in the Keys before my house in Palmetto Bay here up in the mainland. So
do you know what the differences were?
Maybe it's the numbers. I don't know the the electricity business that well, but
Yeah.
certainly it's just an amazing response, and they did it. And with 2 weeks, almost 100%. That's amazing.
Yeah, the Florida Keys Aqueduct Authority is the water provider as well. They have a big job running that line down, and there were leaks and problems with it. And I think there still are a few boil water orders in effect. If we can, let's put it up on the screen, and we're going to show you where, if you live down in the Keys, you still have to boil your water well. If you don't, it's in the lower Keys: Sunset Key, Cudjoe, Ramrod, Summerlin, Little Torch, Long Beach Road on Big Pine Key, and in the middle Keys: Sombrero, Flamingo area, Coca Plum subdivision, and Marathon. So there are, but these are relatively speaking small areas.
Very small areas, and it's really because of the testing. The testing hasn't been done. They're probably okay, but the aqueduct's being very cautious, and it's just the testing that needs. Some of those areas are probably cleared by the time we have the show.
Yeah.
I just want to ask a question on behalf of countless groups in Miami-Dade and Broward County who we here in the news station get notices all the time about relief efforts, supplies heading down. There's an influx of people who want to help the Keys, and that could be a double-edged sword traffic-wise. Frame for us, how is it going and what should be done differently?
The relief effort?
Yeah.
Well, it's going very well because we're right away we needed water, and there was more water that I'd never seen in my life. It's just stacked water
that right?
everywhere. So we had plenty of water.
Well, with
which is
boiled
great.
water orders, you may still need that, right?
Exactly, which is in small areas. And again, by the time the show's over, most of these will probably be free from boiled water.
Oh, is that
also.
right? Okay.
Yes, things are moving very fast. We have a Keys website, keysrecovery.org, that has all kinds of information on there, and we really want people to go on there and help us out.
Roman, we don't have to tell you, Glenna and I both know the Keys, have spent a good deal of time there. It's just one of the most unique places in the world. A lot of fun, and people who, have facets to their personalities you might not get elsewhere in, say, Boca Raton. No, put down of Boca Raton.
Oh boy.
But one of the things that I just thought was remarkable from our reporters in Key West and in the Keys was the generosity of people down there. People who had almost nothing shared their food, shared their water, helped their neighbors. I mean, there's just something very special about what happened in the last 2 weeks.
It is a special place. It is a colorful place too, but with that comes a lot of folks that love each other so much, and the neighbors, and that's why this housing thing, even though it's a problem, it's a huge problem, folks are helping each other out short term. The long term is what we need to do.
Yeah. One human family. I heard people in the Keys say that on more than one occasion.
One human family, yes sir.
Roman Gastesi, so great to have you with us. Thanks for making the drive to be
Thank
with
you.
us today. And please do keep in touch as the days go on. And, it'll help us disseminate information for people who need it and, maybe help people in the Keys with what we do.
Thank you
Be
for having
great.
me.
Roman, thanks so much. All right, up next, yes, it is time for the roundtable.
Stay tuned.
Oh, we have so much to talk about this morning with our Powerhouse Roundtable.
We've already started.
Yeah,
Some
we have.
introductions first. Justin Safey is publisher of the Safey Review, a daily roundup of political news and opinion from around the state. He is an attorney and about to relocate to Washington, D.C. with Ballard Partners. Jacqueline Charles is a reporter with the Miami Herald. She covers the Caribbean, and this week she covered the United Nations General Assembly. H.T. Smith is a veteran Miami attorney and a civil rights leader and icon at the roundtable. Welcome all.
Good morning. Great to have you come in.
And something new this morning you should all be aware of. We are on Facebook Live. Paradise Afshar, our digital queen, is putting us on Facebook Live this morning. So anyone who is, I suppose, not watching us here, that doesn't even matter that should be watching us there. So let's, can we start with an 11th person at the Hollywood Hills nursing home passed away this week as a direct result of the hot box that facility had become without air right after Irma. So many levels of things that have gone wrong in that. Justin, in a big picture, so many people had a hand in not doing what should have been done. But I guess the question is, has deregulation of that industry, can we start there? Is that something we should be looking at?
You know, I don't know. I don't know that the answer is more government regulations. To me, if you're responsible for taking care of elders and people who are sick, you have a responsibility to get them to safety if you're losing power and if their body temperature starts going too high that's good for their health. There's a hospital right across the street. So, and we also have to keep in mind, there are thousands and hundreds of nursing homes across the state that didn't have this problem. So it seems like this was the problem of a bad actor, of a single individual, a single group, a single company, nursing home that acted in ways that are absolutely unthinkable. Now, at the same time, it's been reported there have been calls that were made for help, and it seems like those calls may not have gotten the response. But then I would also question, well, maybe they didn't call the right people. I mean, it doesn't seem like there were any calls made to 911. Memorial Hospital is right across the street from the facility. So I guess we can look for whether the government did what it should do and whether there should be what the response should be. But for me, I put responsibility on the people who are responsible for caring for those individuals.
And that's true. That the people there are responsible for caring for the people, but we try to bring up the deregulation boogeyman. The government should not allow people to put poison our water, to poison our air, or to not have facilities that are sufficient to care for our frail elderly citizens. In 2006, one of our heroes, Dan Gelber, tried to pass resolution that will require it, and it was stopped. Everybody who was a part of stopping it, we should have their pictures and their names on the front page of every newspaper throughout this state. But yes, they made a call, but you know what? Now this part I agree with. Someone is dying. They made a call. An 11-year-old would have called 911 and taken them right next door. We call the governor in Tallahassee. That's stupid.
Well, they called several times.
It's
They
still
called
stupid.
several times, but there was no sense of urgency, at least based on the stories that we ran in the Miami Herald. We did a very comprehensive report, and it's just horrifying what happened, and you wanted to say, what happened, what went wrong? And I don't know if more regulation would have prevented that, because there were steps that were put in place, things that they were supposed to do, they were supposed to report, but when they reported, they never talked about the failure of the air conditioning system.
A specific regulation would have prevented it, and that is you must have a generator that has the power to bring air conditioning in this facility once the regular power goes off. That's what killed the people, all 11 of them. So I agree, we don't need to overregulate, but we need to have reasonable regulations when it comes to people's safety, especially the frail, especially our children.
The governor has gone ahead and issued basically an executive order through AHCA, the Agency for Healthcare Administration, and Justin, he is saying within 60 days, any nursing home in Florida must have a generator and fuel capable of running for 4 days if they lose power during a natural disaster. And the Nursing Home Association met Friday in Tallahassee, and they kind of were up in arms, and they said, hey, we can't do this in 60 days. And they may have a point, but this is something that really must be done.
Well, I don't know if it must be done, quite honestly, because again, most nursing homes did not have this failure. This failure was in one particular nursing home. If you were to add up the costs of that mandate by the governor, that's going to increase the cost for these nursing homes, and that's also going to increase the cost for the patients and the people who pay to put those people in nursing homes for one bad actor in the system. So put aside that for a moment. Let's assume that we do think that this is necessary. Then really, there's a lot of nursing homes to fully provide electric power for a nursing home for 4 days. That could be a very large generator that'd be very expensive, a lot of fuel required.
Newsflash.
And who knows, the people that make the generators have enough supply to even get those generators to sell to the nursing homes within 60 days. I don't know whether the supply is even there.
Yes,
H.T. Smith agrees with Governor Rick Scott. Absolute newsflash.
I see the headlines
Absolutely.
being printed
The
now.
governor of the state of Florida doesn't think it's too much regulation to require for 4 days. Basically, what we need to do is get started on it. I think my friend Justin makes a good point. There may not be enough generators. Well, let's find out.
But isn't that part of a generator is part of a plan? Shouldn't there be a plan?
Yes.
Either a generator, an evacuation plan, someplace to go. And I can't help but think that now, in hindsight, which is usually 2020, going back and looking at the on Medicare.gov, you could see Medicaid.gov. There is a list of nursing homes in the state of Florida and all of the inspection reports. This place
Substandard.
Yes. They have
below
problems.
average, and so now are we to go back and look at other facilities where something like that may be happening as we speak? We just don't have a storm to uncover the problem. We don't have anyone who's died yet.
Yeah, and I don't want people to misunderstand what my good friend Justin is saying. He's not saying that we should tolerate one bad actor causing 11 of our fellow citizens to die. That's not what he's saying.
No, of course.
And what I'm saying is, if we put the regulation in place, there will not be bad actors with regard to the generation issue that will cause people to die. Then the overall plan, we'll look at other ways we can also make this better for our elderly.
My view is punish the bad actors.
Yes.
Go after the bad actors.
Yes.
Hold them responsible.
Absolutely.
They should not go unaccountable for 11 people dying under their care. Go after them, but why require everybody else who are the good actors to all of a sudden now have all these expensive costs?
But
to
how
me,
do you prevent
it could be
that from
potential.
happening? And how do you know? I mean, we know about this incident because 11 people died, but like Glenna said, you could have had other incidents that also happened, but we just didn't know about it. It wasn't reported. So how do you prevent this from happening in the future, next year, next hurricane season, this hurricane season?
And ACA, for the record, was for the last couple of years redacting all the serious information in these reports on how these nursing homes were doing. The feds were publishing it, but the state was not. Now the state says, okay, we will not redact these reports.
Well,
and that's progress.
The good thing is that we're talking about this issue. A good thing is that some action is going to be taken. The good thing is that our sick, who are especially elderly, I think will have a better future in the nursing home. Now, if you have money, the nursing homes are great. Yeah. But if you don't have money, you got a problem.
You know, also, I do want to point out a number of people acted well, were heroic in this. And I want to point out there's the chief nursing officer at Memorial Regional Hospital, a lady named Judith Frum. Don't know her, but I know what she did. And after they got 3 patients, one of whom died, early on that Wednesday morning, she and somebody else from Memorial Regional, you know, the light went off and they said, we got to go over there and see what's happening. And it was then that the alarm was sounded and they immediately started the evacuation. So Judith Frum and the ER doctors and nurses and staff, more power to you. They should have been contacted much earlier.
And they were heroes. Justin makes a good point with regard to that. I think our first responders, whether they were police, fire, or medical, were fantastic. Were they perfect? They were absolutely fantastic. Think about it. Everybody here and everybody watching us had a choice to go or stay. All the first responders had no choice. And think about the fact how your family felt, that you had to leave your family and go to help all the rest of us.
And the nursing home staff.
And the nursing
people
home
who work in these nursing homes, they have families to take care of, and their job is to take care of the people who are in these nursing homes.
You know, this brings up another question. That this nursing home, no nursing homes are on the power company's first priority reconnection list. There's first responders are, hospitals are.
Schools.
But schools. Nursing homes are not.
Shelters.
And elderly housing is not. We spent so much time at elderly housing where there's no medical component to it. It's just low-income elderly. Is it time to put the places where elderly and fragile people live back on top of that list?
I think it's a no-brainer. Absolutely. Absolutely, yes. Because they're frail, because they're elderly, they should be part of that priority list. And if that means the rest of us have to stay without power for an extra couple days or 3 or 4 days or whatever it is, then they're the ones that should be at the front of the line to get the power first. I don't know, but I assume that that's done by the
But
maybe
it
the
took
public.
15 minutes for them to reconnect that transformer, by the way. So it's not even waiting a couple of days. 15 minutes. You could have saved how many lives?
The power companies make the list, the priority list.
The power companies do?
Yeah, because that's
with
how I found
input
out.
from.
That's how I knew I was going to get power soon.
How'd you
priority
know?
list?
I was very near a shelter, and they got to make power for the
You're
shelter.
you're on someone else's grid.
I'm coming over to your house next time.
Anytime.
We all are.
And I'm coming to yours in D.C.
All right, time to take a quick break. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Party at
Welcome back. We are in the midst of our roundtable with the redoubtable Justin Safey, soon on his way to Washington, Jackie Charles of the Miami Herald, H.T. Smith, iconic Miami attorney. Let's talk a little bit about the restoration of power. FPL did put together an amazing army of electricians, workmen, at one point 28,000, and God bless them, thank them for coming, working hard. 40% of customers here had their power back within one day, and that was good. Well, here's the question I've got, Justin. In the past, 2004, 2005, FPL asked the PSC, the State Public Service Commission, to have customers pay $1.5 billion for the restoration of power after those 4 hurricanes. They're certainly going to ask the PSC for residents, customers, to pay this bill. I would only say FPL is a for-profit company. It pays its shareholders a very handsome dividend. Shouldn't shareholders who take a risk when they buy the stock, shouldn't they help pay for this too?
Well, it gets a little complicated because they are a regulated industry. They're regulated by the Public Service Commission, and I think it's a shared responsibility. I think that obviously they're going to ask ratepayers to do it. It is an extraordinary expense. I happen to live next to a staging area for these people that were coming in, and I saw trucks from all over the country, from New Hampshire, from Texas, you know, near my house every night when they were kind of coming in with their trucks and their tree trimmers. So I think that it's an expensive thing for them to do, but I really have to say, I mean, I told my kids, be prepared. When I saw the size of the storm and the strength of the storm, I said, we're going to be out of power for 2 to 3 weeks. I remember after Hurricane Andrew, I lived in Coral Gables at the time, I was out of power for 3 weeks. Only 1.3 million people lost power after Andrew. Over 6 million people lost power after this storm. Right. So look, no one likes to be without power at all, but we have to recognize these storms are so powerful. They unleash more energy on our state than thousands of nuclear bombs. So if we had 100 nuclear bombs dropped in the state of Florida, I don't think anyone would be complaining that I don't have my power back after 3 or 4 days.
That's an interesting metaphor.
We have to understand that. That is true. You know, look it up on the internet. It is true. These hurricanes unleash a massive amount of energy in our state, and we have to recognize it's a natural disaster. And so look, if you're out of power for a week, that's a tough thing to swallow, but I think that FPL did a good job this time.
Okay, I just want to take this opportunity to say, last week at about this time, we actually have invited representatives from FPL to be on the program. They have declined for whatever reason, and then last Sunday, right about this time, we had a representative call in to be on the phone.
Right.
We did not know at the time we were discussing that he had been on the phone. There was a miscommunication there, regrettably. But of course, we invite FPL anytime to come and sit with us. I just wanted to make sure that that was publicly known, that they were on the phone. We did not know they were here at the desk.
Right.
And so we'd like to make that happen.
And as a matter of fact, Eric Szilagyi, the president of FPL, CEO, Mr. Szilagyi, if you are watching, we'll give you a fair hearing. Come on, be on this program. You know, you can present your side of it. There were good things that you did, and then some things that you did that we've been critical of. So come on, let's have a discussion.
2 quick points. One, the headline from what Justin said is, in response to your question, it's a shared responsibility. It should be shared by the ratepayers and shared by those of us who hold stock. Second point is that Szilagyi wrote an op-ed today in the Miami Herald, and he said the number one thing we need to do better is communicate. Well, it starts with coming on the show like this and communicating. Jackie?
No, I agree with you. I mean, you know, I'm a journalist, so I want to hear from you. I mean, we've been critical, but as you said, there are things that they did do, but they need to come, they need to explain the situation so that the public understands, because we're going to have more hurricanes.
Jackie, you were just back from New York covering the General Assembly.
Yes.
I think everybody's headline speech out of the General Assembly was the president and North Korea. Less so the president of Dominica, who you covered on Twitter. That island, the Caribbean islands, Puerto Rico, you have a first-hand look at what happened this week there, and how dire is that? What can South Florida take away from that?
Well, there's a lot of focus on Puerto Rico, but the reality is that there are at least 8 to 15 Caribbean nations that have been slammed by hurricanes this hurricane season. We had, in the span of 12 days, 3 Category 5. People forget Jose, even though it didn't make a direct hit, but it did bring a lot of rain to a lot of these territories. Dominica, Category 5. Maria made landfall there. The Prime Minister, his roof went in the middle of the storm. He had to be rescued. And he spoke yesterday, and he gave a very profound speech. And one of the quotes that I remember him saying is that to deny climate change is to procrastinate while the earth sinks. From the Caribbean contingent, there is a plea out there to the international community to not just move forward with this Paris Accord, but to address the fact that we have climate change. The climate is changing. Things need to be addressed. Every time you have one of these hurricanes, it sets development back in the region. But one of the things you saw in this, the silver lining, is the Caribbean responded to itself. It didn't wait for the U.S. government. It didn't wait for the United Nations. It was first on the ground. They were there. They were making assessment. And today there are hundreds of Caribbean engineers, medical professionals, first responders that are throughout the region taking stock, trying to figure out the depth of the damage of these hurricanes out there.
Well, Dominica is a very beautiful island.
Yes.
I mean, they're all beautiful. That one happens to be one of the most beautiful and just
Yes.
was devastated. The American Virgin Islands, the British Virgin Islands,
Turks and
then
Caicos.
Turks and Caicos, and Hispaniola, the DR at the eastern
Yes.
end, took a hit. How did Haiti do?
Well, I was in Haiti during Irma, and while it dodged a bullet, there was still a lot of damage. There are still people, farmers, the most vulnerable of your society, who today their farms are underwater. I went to the Northwest, which was slammed last year during Matthew, didn't get a lot of coverage because the focus was on the southern peninsula. But I spoke to farmers who, for instance, said, look, this banana plantation, I planted it last year. We're waiting for it to mature in November, and now this storm has come out and it has washed it away. So today they don't have any farms, they don't have any income, and they don't know how they're going to manage. And with Haiti, it's a vulnerable country. So with any rain event, you're going to get floods. And so they did get damage from Irma, and they did see a lot of rain. In fact, there were 3 deaths that were reported as a result of Hurricane Maria.
When we talk about the Caribbean, we must give a shout out to Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines. With these big, beautiful ships, they diverted them and went to the Caribbean, picked up people who had no place to live, no food, no water, no money, and little hope, and brought them to safety, and then shuttled back and forth food, water, supplies. I hope that everybody in that Royal Caribbean family feels, look, we showed the world that you can do well and you can do good.
More power to Richard Fain and Royal Caribbean. They were really good citizens in this tragedy. And then Justin, you look at Puerto Rico, you just wonder, how are they going to recover from this utter devastation?
It's hard to imagine, and obviously they're a territory of the United States, so there's going to be a big amount of support from the U.S. to help them. But it's hard to imagine, we were just talking about power being out for a few days here in South Florida for many people. Imagine nobody has power.
Wow.
I mean,
For
even
months.
100%.
For months, right? No one has
months,
power
yeah.
for months. I mean, even if you didn't have power, you could go over to someone else's house. If you had a family member that had power, but and so you have to worry about public health. You have to worry about the economy. I mean, and that
Basic
leads to a number of infrastructure. I mean, it leads to a potentially really chaotic situation.
It's also probably going to lead to an exodus of Puerto Ricans who are going to come to Florida. We've got 1 million Puerto Ricans in the state of Florida right now.
Right.
I mean, I think you're going to see a huge number come. Schools are going to have to absorb them, housing, the employment. This is a big challenge.
Absolutely.
It's worth pointing out that prior to any storm, there were such economic difficulties to begin with. That just
We were
exactly
talking-
And a Zika outbreak as well.
Before we came on, the 3 of us were talking about having a task force that looks at what happened with regard to the storms that came this way and make an assessment of what we did right, what we did not do right, and some recommendations of what we
The
should
state
do.
has one now.
Well,
right?
I'm talking about Miami-Dade County, and I was about to nominate Justin Safety, but unfortunately he's going to Washington, D.C. We don't need all these people patting themselves on the back. Oh, we did such a great job. No, let's have some assessment.
The county is
a
meeting this
serious
week.
assessment.
Yes,
exactly.
The county is meeting this week.
And,
to do
and
just
there is
that.
a special select committee that the House Speaker Richard Corcoran
Yes.
in the Florida legislature has set up to
Yes.
look at hurricane
Yeah,
response.
but they haven't
and
given
preparedness.
it any staff. Jackie Charles, I need to ask you,
Yes.
TPS for Haitians,
Wow.
58,000 Haitians, is going to expire in January?
Yes.
And even though Haiti didn't get the brunt of any of these hurricanes, it was, as you just explained, really hit Should TPS be extended? Will it be extended?
Well, I have to say there's a lot of feelings that TPS is not going to be extended based on what we're seeing coming out of this administration. There is a push to see if they can get some sort of a TPS bill on the DACA legislation that's moving. But the reality is that in Haiti things remain very difficult. You have a new government that is still trying to get its footing. They are now in the midst of protests because of higher taxes. And just a couple of months ago, I went and I spoke to people who were returning from the Dominican Republic. And what I found is that those people have not been able to integrate into Haitian society. This is a country where majority unemployment.
Right. I got to stop you right there. We are out of time. Jackie Charles, great to have you. HD,
Thanks.
My friend, always good to see you. Justin,
Thank
good
you.
luck
Great to have
in
you.
We're going to
Washington.
miss you.
Thank you.
We're going to miss you, Justin.
He'll be back.
I'll be back.
I'll be back.
Okay,
Spending a lot of
promise.
time here at home.
Okay.
All right, up next, right now, a few dozen South Florida residents find themselves living on the streets, caught in a storm of finger pointing about their homes. That's next.
Hurricane Irma disrupted the lives of almost everyone in South Florida in one way or another, but for the residents of Miami's Civic Towers, their lives were turned upside down, inside out. They have been living, some of them for days, in tents on the street.
Important to know, the property's new California-based owners received tens of millions in public money to renovate and to rent the apartments. And for the last few months, they had been relocating residents while that was underway. The storm changed that calculation.
Volunteers bring food and water. At least 24 people, though, are sleeping on the street for a fifth night.
FEMA going to give us apartment. Our apartment.
FEMA has been here to offer post-hurricane emergency assistance, but the displaced residents of Civic Towers are still caught in a storm of finger-pointing. The new out-of-state landlords receiving public loans to renovate these buildings and government subsidies for low-income tenants' rent. They had been relocating people as they did the construction before the storm.
Each month they will tell us, get ready, you're leaving.
Now the whole building is closed because of the damage. These pictures from a city-ordered inspection show exterior damage obvious, moisture damage inside, and indications that some of that damage may have existed even before the storm and just got worse.
The people that they already took out the building, they're in hotels. They've been in hotels for more than 8 months already.
So for the construction, they were telling you to get ready to go to a
Go
motel.
ready, yes, all the
and
time.
then came the hurricane.
Then came the hurricane.
Post-storm, the owners are not getting government rent checks, will not pay for relocation. FEMA has stepped in, but emergency money has a shelf life of several weeks. Meanwhile, for the time, Marcos Maceo and 24 others will be sleeping in tents.
A rep for the owners, Redwood Housing, framed their position this way. Interim housing, due to the damage caused by Hurricane Irma, is a government responsibility. Redwood, they say, have secured 80 hotel rooms to help provide interim housing while the FEMA process continues. Meanwhile, owners' repairs and renovations, which were also paid by government loans and subsidies, that has stopped until inspectors give the okay to resume. That's the City of Miami inspector.
And City of Miami Mayor Regalado, others did step up a little bit to help those folks down
Yes, and FEMA and the city are trying to help, but they need the space, they need the funding, and they need those people to understand that they have a responsibility in deciding how to accept those things.
Exactly. All right, let's take a live look now from our Mount Sinai Medical Center cam. That is what the day looks like.
A check on your Sunday forecast coming up right after the break.
All right, let's take a live look again from our Hollywood beach cam. Looks nice out there.
Certainly nicer than this morning. Weather Authority meteorologist Jennifer Correa has the details.
Good afternoon, South Florida. Finally, some blue skies out there. Live view out of Fort Lauderdale's Tower Cam. Drier conditions, I might add, because it has been a wet one for Broward, especially on the eastern side. Fort Lauderdale, you're seeing drier conditions. There's still a cluster of thunderstorms offshore, but for the most part, for the rest of the afternoon, as far as this in-house model shows, we're staying mainly dry. Just some lingering cloud cover out there. Maybe an isolated shower further inland, and that's about it. For the rest of the week, rain chance will stay low by Wednesday.
Jennifer, thanks for joining us this morning. Remember, as always, stay informed, get involved.
Please do weigh in on any topic you like. We love to hear from you. Here are all the ways you could reach us. We hope you do. Meanwhile, have a beautiful Sunday. See you next week.
And beat those Jets.